Welcome back to another episode of the Erickson Brothers Podcast. My name is Jeff Erickson. I am your co-host today, and we're just two brothers giving our perspective on the world. We're talking about topics like our faith, family, fitness, finances, and fun. And one thing I like about this podcast is we are answering the questions we do not yet know the answers to. We're in the thick of it. We're in the trenches, and we're coming to you with a real and a raw interpretation of how we see the world. So, Mr. Matt, how are you? How are things?
Good, real good. Let's jump into it today.
Let's jump right in. One thing I like, one thing I've been doing recently is I started reading this book. It's actually up here. I'm a big Audible guy, and I listen to all my books on Audible. But this is my new one I've been attacking. It's called "Choose Your Enemies Wisely" by a gentleman by the name of Patrick Bet David, and I really like it. It's a book on how to strategically make business plans and how to
hmm
leverage both logic and emotion when you're looking for how to create a business plan. And I like that. What are your thoughts on just the title though? Choose your enemies wisely. What are your thoughts? Initial thoughts on it?
Initial thoughts are it could be a very interesting book. I think that yeah, uh, yeah. Let's hear more what you're thinking.
Yeah, well, so one thing I really like about it is it talks about how everybody has enemies, and through choosing your enemies wisely is you can actually like leverage what they've said to actually give you like motivation and inspiration to go achieve your goals. And whether it's like an enemy is in like another company, it could be like an enemy is in um someone actually like holding you back, or like an actual adversary trying to keep you
hmm
from achieving what you want. It could be like a bad habit that you have.
Yeah.
So it's like there's different like resistances, so to speak, in business. And through choosing your enemies wisely, you can actually leverage those to give you more motivation and I don't know, just help re-improve your skills or um, keep going even if you've already achieved some of the goals you initially had.
hmm hmm Yeah. My mind just immediately goes to you can't be everything to everyone. Uh, you can't serve everybody else's needs all the time. And I think by it, if you try to, then you become your own enemy. You might be stretched too thin, or you might be hindered by the quality of work that you're doing because you're doing too much. You're running from one thing to the next.
Hmm.
Um, but if you can, choosing your enemies wisely is also like, oh, I think even an enemy could be something as simple as like bad food or alcohol or just these choices that make you aware of you putting yourself on the other side of the table or the other side of the battlefield as these things that might not be enemies to everybody, but if you can make them enemies intentionally, then that will set yourself up. Um,
Well, like if we think about it, like what do most people do? They let their enemies pick them.
yeah,
Right. It's like they default and like their enemies become drinking too much, or their enemies become being addicted to porn, or their enemies become, I don't know, like things that
right,
like the world naturally
right.
influencing them.
Or or even now, like whatever it is, it's just this passive thing where I think of an election year coming up, and people say, "Oh, poor me," blah blah blah. Um, the the Democrats are the enemy, or the Republicans are the enemy. Like something that is so far outside of your control, uh, in your day to day life, you can. A lot of people just let it become something that defines who they are, and they can let it define how they act, how they treat people, and things like that. And it's it's very divisive, and people always say, "Oh, we're more divided as a country than ever before," but like one, that's not true. It's just taking a different form, but that's just because of the people putting themselves on one side of the table where there's actually there really is no division there. Maybe in a few set of beliefs, but in
Yeah.
true identity, not really.
Yeah, like America has to choose their enemies wisely. Like instead of having liberals versus conservatives or black versus white or right versus left or whatever, it's like, no, our enemies is people that are trying to attack us. And it's like enemies is anyone that's trying to, I don't know, like disable America for what it is, take away our freedom. So, um,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, attack might be a strong word, but the I think that an enemy for a lot of people too is like the enemy you don't know.
mhm.
And uh, I think that probably in that book, one of the first chapters is just identifying your enemies, who they are and
Yeah,
who they and knowing and really how do you set yourself up on the battlefield, so to speak, and what really is the battlefield. So Flatirons actually had a really good sermon on that a few weeks ago, and they said if you identify more with somebody, or let me back up. So the one of the pastors was talking about how when Jesus came back, or sorry, when Jesus was born, and then um, later into his ministry, he reached out to people that nobody really suspected, and that really fired up a lot of the Gentiles and people, the religious folk, and people who are quote unquote in the club of religion. Um, so the pastor brought in that to today, like, oh, associate yourself someone with if you associate yourself more with someone that has a has the right has the same political views, or if you associate yourself more with someone that potentially lives in the same neighborhood or has similar jobs or has similar interests, if you relate yourself to somebody more than you do a follower of Christ, then you're probably not looking at the
yeah,
world correctly. Like it really, like he basically addressed like who is in your tribe, who is in Jesus's tribe, and who are you really loving and spending time with. And if you find yourself identifying more with a Chiefs fan or a Chiefs hater over another person who um, follows follows Jesus, then it really takes some evaluating of where your priorities are.
yeah. And like what your identity is too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's good. That's good.
mhm,
I like how relating that back to faith as well. That's big.
mhm, mhm,
So yeah, I'm excited for finishing up the rest of the book. The gentleman who wrote it, Patrick Bet David, is he's had a nine-figure exit. He's running a huge entrepreneur podcast and pretty fascinating guy just to learn from. And yeah, he's like a big father, has four kids, he has like the family side to him too. So a lot of different things I aspire to have and aspire to achieve as well. So definitely a cool guy to learn from.
yeah, that's good. What else is coming across your mind in that book?
Um, well, how you can actually create a business plan with emotion and logic involved. So like logically you can be like, oh, if I do X amount, then I'm going to get Y result, and kind of like having like the numeric side. But a business plan should also have emotion in terms of like I'm doing it for this reason, and this is
Mhm,
why I'm so driven, and this is what's going to be able to get me through the hard days because I have to achieve this for this person, or I want to be able to take care of this person later in life. So
mhm,
he talks about when like pitching a business and when like pitching for funding, and you might actually know a little bit about this just being in the finance world and the investment banking world, but the pitch shouldn't just be all numbers, right, the pitch should have some emotion to it because the emotion is actually going to get people bought in, and then obviously the numbers back it up. But he was just talking about the mix of the two, and I thought that was really good in terms of like how a plan and a pitch should have emotion to it. So I thought that was fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow. That's neat. Well, let's take a break. I need to do this thing real quick. I gotta find.
So again, yeah, just being able to use emotion and logic on the business planning side and on the pitch side. But I guess I'm curious for you, like, have you ever seen that with like the corporate presentations that you guys have done?
Yeah, all the time. I think that there's just in what we do, very high level overview, that the numbers don't lie and they tell a story, and the numbers are the numbers, but the story behind it and the way you can shape and craft those to put a story behind the company in the specific deal, and say here's what they were dealing with either current suppliers or customers or market trends, and just helping craft that story. So the emotion definitely comes through, and when we're um, pitching a either a product to a company, or we're pitching a product to a bank, another bank, it's a lot of the time how we can convey that message, because the numbers are going to be the numbers, but the story that it tells is oftentimes very important as well.
Yeah, cool. Cool, good stuff. I like the perspective on it for sure.
Hmm.
All right. Topic number two, anything that comes to mind, any specific topics? I'm gonna throw the ball in your court.
Yeah, so I was gone for the past 2 weeks, traveling. I was in Colorado for work, and then Nashville for work. And uh, during my travel in Nashville, I got the opportunity to just talk with the CEO a little bit during this dinner, and he had risen through the ranks of a different corporate company and made it pretty high up, and then now he's the boss at this company. And so I asked him about it and his journey, and one thing he said a few things to me that I'll definitely take away. So we're at dinner, and he goes to me, Matt, so gonna need to go back to work after this, or are you gonna see some live music? And I said, well, to be honest, I've got a lot of stuff to do, so I'll probably be going back to work. And he goes, huh, Matt, well, oftentimes, and how I got into the position that I'm currently in, I went out and saw the music. I went out and went to the bars instead of going back to work. And I think a lot of that has to do, or is a result of um, the seat I'm sitting in now, to build those relationships
Mm,
and do the things, because there's always going to be more work, but there isn't going to be those opportunities to form those relationships. So um, he said that to me, and I responded with just like all right then, yeah,
so,
I guess I'm
so
going out then, like let's
yeah, so what are we drinking?
yeah, so are you joining? um but I think, what to your point too, just the importance of relationships in business, and people can get caught up in sending email, but the face-to-face interaction is so much more important, and especially when there are those opportunities to have those face-to-face interactions, uh it's extremely important to take advantage of that, um knowing that the work and the numbers and
Yeah.
that is important too, but also seizing those opportunities to build the relationship. So that was good.
It's like the not like it's not like the tangible part of business. It's like those relationships aren't something you can measure, but like the work you can measure. But there's still like an ROI on having a strong relationship with the MD or a strong relationship with other associates.
Yeah, yeah, and in this case, it's the CEO,
Yeah.
um, because he's uh because when they have stuff to do, when they go to to banks, they have an entire bank group, um, 15 to 20 banks that they can choose from of, hey, where are we going to hold our cash? Where are we going to uh, go to? Where are we going to hedge our commodity risk or currency risk? Like each bank has products that they provide, and they're essentially competing against one another. Uh, so in times when there's a negligible difference in the product, it's the relationship that matters. Um, so
Yeah.
even though I'm not on the relationship side, I'm on the capital market side. There are banks competing for that capital markets business too, um, and that's just kind of uh, a big part of it. I've learned. So um,
Cool.
yeah, yeah, and I think over the past 2 weeks, I've had the opportunity to speak in front of different groups for work, and then back in New York, I spoke at an Athletes in Action event, and uh, just shared how important that had been in my life. And um, I, I've talked about it on the podcast before, but just the influential people I've had from the community at Athletes in Action for people my age, and then also the leaders, and how that continues to have positive impacts in my life today, with getting connected to the church that I'm going to, and various people, and just have absolutely um, benefited from Athletes in Action. So um, I spoke about that, and just one of these interesting timing things. The week before at church, the the pastor was talking about, like, oh, like there will be a time when you get called, um, and called being God taps on your shoulder and says, here's an opportunity to share the gospel. Here's an opportunity to for non-believers to commit your life to Christ. There are times when you get called, and initially I went away from that sermon thinking, oh, I don't think there's one time, like as Christians we're constantly called to um, just be salt and light of the earth, and
Hmm.
it's a continual decision. And then this Athletes in Action opportunity came up 3 days later, and it was kind of like, oh, this is the call right here, the opportunity to speak. And then as they try to plant Athletes in Action at different universities in New York City, um, the call to participate, help in any way I can. So that was very convicting.
Yeah.
Uh, it's been so helpful in my life, and um, knowing that I have uh, enough. Like there's always going to be time commitments, and I can always say I don't have time, but I think this is something that I need to make time for, and it's something that I should dedicate resources to. So, uh, yeah, just very interesting how um, the putting yourself in opportunities to be called, and then so we circle back to the CEO, and in his portion of the presentation, he mentions, "Oh, we've been very blessed to have a great team that are very good at what they do, and it's shown over the past few years." So when I'm sitting next to him at dinner, I just bring that up. I'm like, "Hey, notice that you mentioned that. Do you have a faith? Like, what is your background?" And then we had another long conversation about that, and it's just continual another opportunity where it's like, hey, we can have this conversation. And he was very appreciative that I brought it up and asked him about it, because he sometimes wonders if people do hear him, and he does struggle with leading a big corporation and also being Christian, and how
Yeah.
those two meet. Um, so me
Interesting.
just mentioning something really encouraged him. So I think as I as we're talking about relationships and business and timing with church and what the Lord is calling, and then also this conversation I've had, I think for people out there, I think it's just be receptive to what's happening around you, um, and know that the relationships are important. And I think as at 24 and 23, I think we're only just scratching the surface on that thing, and who knows what that will lead like, what that will look like in the future. But um, in my short time the past few weeks, I've just noticed the benefits of keeping my ears open to what people are saying, and whether it's at church or in in work, and then following up with people, and having the opportunity to encourage people and uh, help them along their way. So
Yeah.
I don't know if any of that connects,
No, I
but
mean that's good. And I was listening, I was listening along, and um I like the story behind it, and how you circled back to the how
mhm,
relationships are important, and then obviously how faith and business kind of go hand in hand. Obviously not on the in the corporate sense, but like on like the relationship side for sure, and on the emotion side, kind of circling back to our first conversation. So
yeah, yeah. And I think apart from business, just personally, the relationships you have with friends and just your ability to pour into them and love them is very important. And then sometimes there is that tap on the shoulder from God saying, "Hey, this is the time to potentially share the gospel or invite them to church,"
mhm.
uh, and be intentional with that. Um, so, yeah, that's I think that's a very rough description, the past 8 minutes of what we're trying to get across, but well, like that's why we're here, trying to smooth things out, and then hopefully, in time, be able to say what I just said in a minute and not eight.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Well, it made sense to me. So don't don't cut yourself down too much.
yeah, yeah. So I know we'll wrap up quickly, but um, what do you have for us, Jeff?
No, I mean I thought that was good, and we do have we do have a quick 2 minutes, and I do want to go into our third topic real quick. Um,
Okay.
and it's okay if this guy can wait. Um, he is in my waiting room early, but he's gonna have to wait. All right, my third topic is Kayla was having a conversation with someone, and I won't name names, but she was talking about, and Kayla being my girlfriend, and she was talking about how um, she was referencing how we're gonna have a future guest house in one of our houses. And she was like, yeah, like with the guest house, we're doing X, Y, and Z. And she just said it like casually. And the person was like, oh, you think you and Jeff are gonna have a guest house?
Okay.
And they're like scoffing at the idea of us even having a guest house. And I wrote that down underneath my goals. I quoted, you think you and Jeff are going to have a guest house,
Hmm.
because it's like, there hasn't been like too many instances in my
Hmm.
life where like somebody's like doubted me, just because like we grew up in such a loving house, like very loving environment growing up, very supportive of like every goal, like at least for me and how I
Yeah.
saw it, like everyone in everyone in my family supported me. And I think you would be able to agree with that in terms of just like supporting and encouraging and loving, like very rich household on that side. Um, and even in the business side now, like a lot of people are like encouraging and supporting and like believing and whatnot. And I've never had anyone like say that before about like me doubting me on what I'm gonna achieve. So I'm wondering, have you ever talked about some of the things that you've wanted to achieve and then had somebody been like taken back at you thinking big or you dreaming or you trying to achieve more?
Uh, I don't think that's happened uh to my face. Um, it definitely could have happened in other conversations. I would say I'm personally not vocal with what my goals
Hmm.
are. So I think that is people are different. But
Yeah.
like I've got long-term goals. I don't think 99% of the people I know them. Um, but what you are saying reminds me of just an Instagram post I saw, and it was the difference between, when there's these big football games or World Series, basketball finals, whatever it is, you have the map of people who support which team,
Yeah.
and they compared I think it was 2018 or 2019 Super Bowl with Kansas City versus the Patriots, and everybody was supporting Kansas City except for the Northeast.
Hmm.
And now 5, 6 years later, you have the AFC Championship, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
and everybody's supporting Baltimore except for Kansas, and it's just like it, this particular Instagram post was talking about, oh, just like how times have changed and blah blah blah, and I think, of course, satirical to a point, but my thinking was just like how people just can't relate to or don't appreciate greatness and talent. And people want to associate themselves with mediocrity, and that's why people cheer for underdogs, because they're the less talented team and they're coming up, and I think it's relatable, but greatness is not relatable to
Mm.
people. Nobody
Fire.
People liked Patrick Mahomes a lot more when he was the underdog, just the average guy, and he's not the average guy anymore. He's been to the AFC Championship six of the past year, six of the past years, and now to the Super Bowl 4 of those 6. And people are like, "Oh, I hate the Chiefs. Like they're always there, blah blah blah." It's like, no, he's the same guy. You just don't like that he's great at what he does. Um, and I
That's
think
good.
it, and I think people just don't like seeing it's a me versus them great people, me and everybody else, like the average. Um, and I think people just don't like greatness because they doubt it for themselves, and it's there. I think honestly, Portnoy has talked about this. That
Yeah.
in one of his rants is like people. That's why people don't like Tom Brady, because he's good. It's like, but or like LeBron James because he's good. Like, but what in the public eye, what have these people done to really deserve so much hate from 99% of the people? And it's them being good at what they do. And I think a lot of those people can't look
Well,
inwardly and
it's
say,
almost
this
a
is what I'm
reflection
great at.
back on the average person on like what they haven't achieved.
Yeah. Yeah. So, um, in terms of your story, um, I think that the thing is, oh, people don't want to admit greatness to others. And if Patrick Mahomes loses yesterday, then people can say, "Oh, he's just a normal guy," blah blah blah. It's like, no, he's not a normal guy. He's incredible. You're the normal person, and you just can't get your head around that people are doing exceptional things over and over and over again when you don't. Um, and I think you and I are not out throwing touchdowns in the AFC Championship.
Hmm.
Believe it or not, um, I think as 24 and 23-year-olds, like we don't have a whole lot of enemies. But people that know about our podcast are like, why would you do that? Like that's dumb. Um, or why would you um like just do what you do? But again, like we've said this before, but the things that um we do, we being not we, the things that people do are not for everybody. Success is not for everybody.
Hmm.
And we definitely aren't on that other side of the table, but we can know that that's possible and can shoot for it.
Yeah, no, I think that's big. And I think no one ahead of you is ever going to tear you down for what you want to achieve or criticize you for the things you want to be able to do. So it's almost like a confirmation that you're on the right path if people don't agree with you. So
Hmm. Hmm.
anyway, I do got to bounce. I know you do too. We're middle of the day Monday, so we got to get back after it. But finishing up here, another podcast in the books.
Hmm.
Hopefully we'll see you next week, man. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, who knows what we're saying? Who knows how we'll look at this 5, 10, 15, 25 years from now? But that's that's where we're at right now. So
That's the
here we
beauty
are.
is in the small details.
Yep.
Makes it worth remembering. Well, other than that, peace out. Talk to you later.